Getting mad? Did push start? Is it running? Okay, so we are now, everyone, all right, chapter 6. Now, chapter 6 got a special name. It's called The Political Economy of International Trade. In this political economy of international trade, which sounds big and fancy, is, in short, trade policy. So what we covered in the previous chapter is we covered trade theory. Now we're doing trade policy. And policy will be government actions that will try to encourage or hello on the back, okay? We begin. So, policy will be government actions that will try to encourage or discourage certain economic activity. They may want to discourage smoking, or they may want to, let's say, encourage healthy living, or the government may have a health policy to encourage whatever it is. So, we're talking about trade policy. And introduction is fairly straightforward. You got tremendous gains from international trade. These are undeniable. I already told you during military times, you impose on your enemy a blockade. And a blockade, basically, you choke, you stop their trading in and out. And this literally chokes the economy. And even in peacetime, let's say the United States will impose economic sanctions on enemy states and countries like Iran. And an economic sanction will try to stop or block trade of that country with the rest of the world in any possible way. And we know that when you block or stop international trade, it literally kills the economy. So we know that works, and trade policy is essentially, ideally, about promoting free trade. Unfortunately, governments are not always interested in promoting free trade. They're more interested in promoting the special interest of certain political groups. The worst example in Europe will be the European Union promoting agricultural policy, which is basically giving huge subsidies to farmers and keeping food in Europe to be one of the most expensive in the world. So somehow consumers are terribly hurt by the policy. And at the same time, farmers benefit tremendously. And politicians have tried for decades now to get rid of these subsidies. When I started my master's degree in Ireland, in 95, that's 20 years ago, the big topic was CAP, Common Agricultural Policies, and these huge subsidies and how subsidies in agriculture was sucking half of European budget back then 20 years ago, and now it's just as bad, maybe even worse. So these problems sometimes have the tendency to perpetuate themselves for decades and decades and decades, and sometimes it just gets worse and worse and worse. So, that was number one, introduction, not really interesting. Number two is instruments or tools. What are the tools of trade policy? And we got 5 of them to cover today. First big one is tariffs. And tariffs, first of all, you write them with double F, okay? Tariffs run into import. Okay, I'll use this, it's called in English tilde, okay? Import tariffs, which are tariffs imposed on imported goods. and export tariffs. An export tariff is a tariff imposed on export goods. Governments, for some reasons, love import tariffs, and they want to impose an import tariff on everything. And usually governments sometimes use export tariffs, but not always. They rarely use them. And the main reason for the export tariff is the government needs money. The government is hungry, the government is bankrupt, and the government is desperate to get some money from somewhere. And if they have a huge export industry, they will usually tax it to death. That's how governments do, okay? Of course, when you tax highly anything, you eventually tax it to death, but that's a whole different problem. So, these are the types. Now we got tariffs go into what's called ad valorem. Ad, I think with a dash, ad, oh, no dash, it's just space, nothing. Ad valorem tariff, and the other one is called specific. Specific tariff. Specific tariff is fixed. It is fixed as it's fixed as an amount. You want to import a shirt, you're going to pay that much. You want to import a shoe, you're going to pay that much. You want to import a pen, you're going to pay that much. You want to import a barrel of oil, you're going to pay that much. So it is fixed. Ad valorem tariff is a tariff as a percentage of the imported value. So you estimate what's the imported value based on international prices or just simply the import price, as long as the import price is a market price, and you put in a tax, a 10% tax or a 20%. When I say tax, tariff is a tax on imports or a tax on exports. In other words, tariff is a tax on international trade. So I sometimes use tax and tariff interchangeably, but technically we gotta say tariff. So ad valorem tariff is simply a percentage tax, maybe 10% tax. All right, so what do we know about tariffs? First thing, we know who wins and who loses, especially for import tariffs, because we talk mostly about them. We know that consumers lose. Consumers always lose. So, consumers lose, and when you have an import tariff, you know that producers win. So almost always, because consumers are dispersed and unorganized, for example, every consumer is buying a Sony camera, it's $300, okay, $200, and they pay a 10% tax, $20, and I got tens of thousands of them. They are disorganized all around the country. They can't get to organize themselves, so they can't get to organize to lower the tariff. But the producers are only maybe 2 or maybe 3 or maybe 5, and they will have their own association, and the association will lobby for the benefit of producers, so they are very well organized and they stand to gain a lot. So each consumers are many, they stand to lose a little. But producers are few and they stand to lose or benefit a lot. So producers get to organize themselves, they get to win, and they win big time for a big benefit of them at the expense of consumers. Okay, well, here's the problem. You're industry A, you make shoes, you do your own lobby, and at the expense of consumers, and consumers get to suffer because of the shoes, because you lobby successfully. Well, you're producing shirts, you lobby for shirts, you succeed, you get to benefit, and all the other consumers lose. Well, you profit. Let's say you make lipstick, right? So you get to benefit for your lipstick, but consumers of lipsticks lose. Okay? You get to make what? You get to make glasses. You benefit as a glass maker, and everyone else you loses. So economies can get into a dynamic where each little producer gets to benefit in his own area at the expense of everybody else, forgetting that you have to wear shoes and you're going to pay way more for the shoes and you lose on the shoes. You have to wear a tie, you get to lose on the tie. You wear a shirt, you lose on the shirt. And you get to wear the lipstick, you lose on the lipstick. So you may gain on the one thing that you have, but you lose on everything else. And you lose big. And you're an overall loser of the policy. But governments never focus on the big dispersed losers. They always focus on the one winner, which is easy to see. With tariffs, the problem is that it is easy to see that there is a benefit, and it's hard to see who are the many losers. And that's why it is chosen. Also, politically, it's popular with producers. Okay, politically, it's popular. Oh, we're going to protect jobs. And because of protecting jobs, they basically say, screw the consumer. Okay? And that's the policy of many governments, which turns out to be a disastrous policy. Because we know that some of the most developed countries in the world usually keep some of the lowest tariffs themselves. Okay? Well, let's think about it this way. Within the United States, you basically have movements of goods with no tariffs from state to state to state to state. That was the original idea of the United States. The original idea of the United States was not to build an empire. It was just free trade between the states. And the Commerce Clause was there to prevent one state from protecting its own industries with other states. That was what the whole idea of the United States was. And then it degenerated into getting power, dominating the continent, dominating the world, and all the other things that America is today. All right, import, okay. Oh yeah, I forgot that one. Government wins. Of course, a tariff, it brings a lot of revenue for the government. So the government is always eager to find a reason for imposing a new tariff. Of course, like they have a reason to impose a new tax. So as long as anyone in the economy gives them an excuse, the government says, yeah, we need to impose a tariff here. And they immediately impose a tariff. So, because governments are always hungry for more money. So, government also wins quite a lot. Export tariff. All right. Number 2.
Arya, kan du släppa det då? Thank you.
Number 2 will be subsidies. And subsidies always are start with, we just need a little bit of a protection, and we just need a little bit of a help. And this help gets, for another year, and then for another 5 years, and then for another 10 years. And somehow, the problem with subsidies is that they make the economy, the industry weaker. They make the producer uncompetitive. They shield the producer from competitive pressure. And as soon as you start on the road of subsidies, it's like drugs. You need a bigger subsidy, and a bigger subsidy, and a bigger subsidy, and it's a never-ending story. As soon as you stop the subsidy, the industry dies, and the government says, we cannot let the industry die because we're, again, the same old story. We're going to lose a lot of jobs, okay? And they win the favor of the industry. Usually the industry will be providing a lot of political contributions, or a lot of political supports and all sorts of other things. So here we got under two general categories. First one is called farm subsidies, which is the same as agricultural subsidies, and the other one will be non-farm subsidies. We divide them into these two. Let's see what else we have. Yeah, we can also have a possibly what's called a tax credit policy, where a government will be providing a tax credit. It's basically going to return back the tax to you, and returning back the tax that you pay is effectively running as a subsidy. So you're a big business, I don't know, could be military, well, politically protected business, you're supposed to pay 15% tax like all the other businesses around the world or in your own country, and they don't pay the 15% tax. The government gives them a tax credit and returns the tax back to them that they pay. Well, this has the same effect or the equivalent effect of a simple, straightforward subsidy. All right, number two. Number three, questions, guys or girls? No? Number three is import quotas. So, you're going to have an import quotas, and rarely, but you may have an export quota. Usually the government doesn't impose export quota unless it's about a strategic good. Example of an export quota is our home Bulgarian government before the European Union, and even after that, we'll have special export quotas on wheat. We all Bulgarians culturally eat wheat, and because we eat wheat, a lot, meaning bread, a lot, the government will want to make sure that it's got a certain amount of wheat at store, and they can see how much we produce, and then they will impose an export quota on the exports so that we don't export too much out of our own wheat to the point where when the winter comes, we're going to run out of wheat, okay? So this could be an example of an export quota. But typically a quota will be an import. And what is a quota? A quota is simply a limit on the quantity of a specific good that you can import. So a quota is just a limit or a ceiling. You can import no more than that much. And the quota will be implemented usually with, it's called a quota or an import license. Import license. You can import 50 tons of wheat, you can import 20 tons of wheat, you can import 10 tons of wheat. Oh, you're a friend, you made a big contribution, you can import 100 tons of wheat, and the total amount of wheat that you can import is, let's say, 200 tons of wheat. Usually we're going to be working with millions of tons. That's a different story. The point is that we provide import license to our best friends and our best political supporters and our biggest contributors, okay? And the license will have the main idea of limiting the overall import of wheat so that we don't import too much, too cheap wheat to force the price too low, and this way we keep the price high and support our farmers. So say, oh yeah, we're supporting our farmers. How? By keeping imports out and by keeping prices high, and therefore forcing consumers to pay the higher price for bread. Import, okay. You can have what's called a tariff rate quota. And the tariff rate quota will work, let me try and find it with, tariff rate quota will work with in-quota tariff and over the quota. You zooming in from time to time? Yeah.
Sure.
Well, when you zoom in, then after half a minute you zoom out back completely. Over the quota. Over the quota tariff. Let's see, in quota and over quota, my mistake. Over quota tariff. So, we can import, let's say, only 200 tons of wheat. So for the 200 tons of wheat, the 200 tons of wheat will be imported at 5% tariff. So you're my friend, you're going to pay 5%, 5%, 5%, 5%. As soon as the quota limit is reached, you want to import, you will pay 50% tariff rate. I'm making these numbers. These are not real numbers, but could be looking like the real numbers. The main idea is very simple. The in-quota tariff rate is very low, 3, 5, 10, 20%. And the over-quota tariff is what is understood as a punitive tariff. It is very high, 30%, 50%, 100%, okay? So that as soon as you import over the quota, the price is going to be extremely high. The over the quota tariff is so high, which will practically discourage any form of imports economically. So they say, oh no, we do have a quota system, and you can import it unlimited, but in practice it's not unlimited. So as soon as you reach the quota, the total quota, after that it is uneconomical to import, and many will choose not to import at all. So this acts as a wall, this acts as a barrier. You can import so much and not much more beyond that. It just doesn't make economic sense anymore. Okay, let's see what else we have. Yeah, we also have over here one other tool known as VER. VER. And VER is voluntary export restraint. Voluntary export restraint is when the country will force the foreigners to self-restrain themselves because there is a threat. And example will be the American government will tell the Japanese Honda and Toyota and Nissan, you guys are importing into the United States too much. You must agree to voluntarily limit your exports to the United States, because if you don't agree to voluntarily limit, we will force the limit onto you. We will impose on you a higher tariff, or we will impose on you a higher quota. So essentially, the government puts a gun to their head and says, you will do what we want you to do, otherwise we'll pull the trigger, okay? So voluntary that's what they love. They say, oh, it's voluntary. They voluntarily choose. And in reality, it's not. The exporters will never voluntarily choose. It's because the government made a phone call and say, you guys got to do this. If not, there will be penalty. If not, there will be major consequences, okay? And that's unfortunately how in the real world work, but it's called a voluntary export, and governments love to use it because it usually takes a phone call and just say, hey guys, you gotta do this, okay? And usually coming from another country, it's coming from a major minister, some big guy from the other country, and it usually would work because the other guys, especially in the smaller country, will get scared, okay, and say, okay, we'd better restrain ourselves, if not, they're going to restrain us. Okay, so as soon as you have quotas, the quota will restrict the supply, and the restricted supply will mean a higher price. And the higher price will mean a higher profit for the local producers. So, local producers will benefit from the quota. And this benefit is called a quota rent. So, quota rent is the economic benefit, usually profit, which accrues to producers who benefit from the higher price driven by the restricted supply from the quota. Okay? Number 3, we continue. Camera over here. Number 4. Local content, how do I have it? Requirement. Local content requirement is fairly straightforward. Hey, a specific fraction of the good has to be produced at home. So, you're a Japanese, you want to do cars in the United States, at least 20% of these cars should have American-made stuff. Essentially, it is a percentage of the total value of the imported product. This percentage should be made locally, should be made inside the country. For example, you want to import, I'm just making it up, just example, you want to import wine in Bulgaria, well, at least 20% of the grapes should be produced in Bulgaria, okay? So, if you're going to be making, let's say, selling cars, well, the tires should be made here, or whatever else should be made here. So, you just impose a particular, so, when you import a foreign good, it's not 100% foreign, it's going to be only 60% foreign. So, you guys want to import, and this will stimulate a particular local industry. And governments sometimes do this quite often. And number 5, in other words, the 5th type of tool, I'm here discussing tools. So this is tool number 1, tool number 2, tool number 3, tool number 4. Last tool is administrative policies. Administrative policies. I'm making up an example, but it's, that was right after World War II. Japan used a lot of these because Japan was a loser in the war. They opened up, they lowered tariffs, they lowered restrictions. So Japanese government said, oh, you want to import tomatoes? Yeah, we produce tomatoes. You want to compete with us? No problem. we will inspect your tomatoes, okay? And the government will start inspecting one by one each tomato. And it's going to take 10 days to inspect those tomatoes. Well, what happens after 10 days? Well, by 10 days, the tomatoes will spoil and rot, and you got to throw them away, okay? So you want to import a particular good, the government says, no problem. Oh, we want to import a particular thing. We need to disassemble it, okay? You disassemble it, we need to inspect it, and then you reassemble it. And this particular, again, this is all stupid stuff, but it's made to be hard on the exporter. And it makes it complicated, and it makes it difficult, okay? So these administrative policies usually make it hard to the point where they just say, yeah, it's not even worth bothering to export in Japan. It's just way too much. Don't even bother with that, okay? So these, you girls too are having too much fun on the back, the two that are not paying attention, the two of them. Yeah, just close the laptops, okay? Just close it. Yeah, the laptop, just close the lid and separate. Yeah, it doesn't matter, just separate. You're having too much fun, yeah. That's enough. And you might as well just sit up here front, you know, pay attention for the last, we got what, 15 minutes left, right? For the last 15 minutes. No, close completely. Yeah. Enough fun, okay? Oh, if you want, you can just go outside and can have your fun outside, no problem. Well, we got the attendance. Good enough? All right. So, administrative policies, they are supposed to make the life of the exporter real hard, to the point where the exporter gets to hate it, to the point where they just give up. And it works. It works fairly well. Let's see what else we got in here. Sometimes they will use, as part of administrative policy, it's actually more of an excuse as a real policy. It's a real policy, but it's more as an excuse as opposed to, it's called anti-dumping. You can use anti, that's a British, or anti-American. Anti-dumping policies. Here we have the term dumping. And to dump means to sell at extremely low price, to radically lower your price to make sure that you totally beat the competition. And the definition of dumping is they sell it dirt cheap where it's below their cost. So dumping is considered when you sell it below cost so that the seller takes a loss. And they say, oh no, we don't want to allow foreigners to dump their goods onto us because they're going to destroy our own industry. Essentially, what you will see in the movie about Jamaica, the one that I gave you, is that the Jamaican producers are effectively complaining that American producers of agriculture are literally dumping their goods. They're dumping the milk, the powdered milk, and the wheat, and all the other things that they produce in Jamaica. The Americans are dumping it and selling it dirt cheap, and usually with a malicious intent. The intent is to destroy the local industry. The people give up to produce, and then after you destroy the industry, you can sell back your product at a much higher price without competition. So they say we cannot allow foreigners to dump their goods onto us, and we're going to use an anti-dumping policy, and the anti-dumping policy is usually going to be a special levy, a special tariff, because they have, and here is the claim, they say it's unfair competition. It's unfair competition. Well, what if you're a poor Jamaican? Again, you will watch the movie, most Jamaicans are extremely poor, all right? and Americans are dumping onto them cheap wheat and cheap other stuff. What do you say as as a Jamaican consumer? You say, hey, please dump it onto me. Sell it to me dirt cheap. I mean, you're a poor guy who lives on $50 a month. You better get it cheap, okay? So this anti-dumping is a little tricky. It's like all the other previous arguments. Yeah, you may want to protect the local producer, but at the same time, hey, when you have dumping, the consumer benefits tremendously, right? How about guys, let's say the Americans decide to dump onto us iPhones. Wouldn't you guys love when Americans dump onto you iPhones and you get to buy them for $100 dirt cheap? Or let's say Samsung decides, oh, we're gonna dump all of these Galaxies for $100. You can buy the finest and the best Galaxies, right? Wouldn't you love it? Wouldn't you enjoy it? You go, okay, yeah, you're immediately gonna dump your Nokia and buy yourself a new Galaxy for $100, right? Well, so you gotta be very careful, because actually consumers love when foreigners dump their goods onto them. It's just that the producers scream unfair trade, unfair stuff, okay? So they talk about nebulous concepts like fair profit, about fair price, or we can put the fair over here, fair and fair, because you gotta understand, it is never clear what's a fair profit. It's never clear what's a fair price, but you'll hear it. Oh, it's unfair price, $100 for a Galaxy's unfair price. Well, if you ask me, it's quite fair. I'd love to buy it for 100, right? I mean, you guys would love to buy it for 100 too, right? And if they want to dump the laptops, hey, bring the laptops. We're gonna buy them too for $100. We're gonna buy them all right? So you gotta understand that most of these arguments are not true, they're not correct, but they have the idea to manipulate the people. Yet the governments use them quite often. All right, so when you have anti-dumping policy, it is called, the term is called countervailing duty. And countervailing duty is an extra tax imposed on an exporter who is claimed to be dumping their goods. They say, oh, we can't allow in America $100 Galaxy. That's going to kill the iPhone market. That's unfair. We're going to put a $600 tax on it so that it sells for $700, so that we can still continue to sell the iPhones, okay? So that's one way to do it. Back to administrative policies comes to mind immediately. This is a Galaxy Nexus. A Galaxy Nexus is a special type of phone. It is a phone that was totally killing iPhone in the United States. It was the first iPhone, Galaxy, which was produced that is vastly superior to the iPhone, which was so clear that the US government used a special type of administrative policy where they sued Samsung for patent or patent infringement, where they say, oh, they stole our technology, the iPhone technology, and they're using iPhone technology. They say, we can't let this product compete on the US market. So they bring it to court. You stole our technology, and the court says, yes, stolen technology, product not allowed. In the United States, this product will not be allowed on the market. So here's an example where the court, totally and completely biased, maybe, right, most likely, does not allow the product, and in this case, because the product is better, okay? But they say, oh, no, it's stolen technology. Well, it's not clear to me what exactly is stolen, okay? And how this technology of the Nexus is different from Galaxy S2 or S3 or S4 or Galaxy Note. But anyway, that's a very good example where it's administrative policy where they say, oh no, this product, we can't let it stay on the market, so we just find a way to make it illegal. And you can't sell it in the United States. It's a Galaxy Nexus. It's a good machine, okay? Now you got newer pieces like S3, S4, and other stuff which are more advanced. It's 2 years old machine. So that's an example. Here, in this particular case, you got a countervailing duty. So, okay, you're going to tax it to death. You're going to want to sell it for 100. The tax will be 500. And that's it. And we got 4 more minutes. Good enough. Finish early 4 minutes.